Welcome to the IndyCar Red Pill, the show where we talk about IndyCar racing, no punches pulled, and no filter. Today we are talking about the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 at Gateway. And I have to say, this is probably going to be a pretty short episode because there's a lot of positivity swinging on in IndyCar racing right now, particularly because of the race at Gateway. Now, Gateway is one of those tracks where you kind of think about it, and kind of like Road America, is one of those tracks where when you think about it, you say, why did IndyCar ever leave? Clearly, there's a fan base there. 40,000 people. Some estimates are higher, some estimates are lower, as they always are. But I saw with my own two eyes IndyCar racing filling a grandstand from top to bottom. Indianapolis hardly ever does that anymore. So the fact that little old Gateway out in St. Louis was able to produce a fantastic crowd for IndyCar racing on an oval, something that we have, and that Robin Miller, I think, pointed out during the broadcast, we haven't seen that in 15 years at an oval. So it's pretty good. It's a really, really positive step, especially because the Pocono attendance was up as well. That was probably around 29,000-30,000. So, in this day and age with the competing entertainment out there, the fact that you can get 40,000 people to get out of their butts off their iPads for 2.5 hours to see an IndyCar race on an oval track. Oval tracks have struggled to produce ticket sales in the past. I have to give credit to Gateway Motorsports Park, to the Bommarito Auto Group, and to IndyCar because they put on a fantastic event. And speaking of a fantastic event, guess what? We had a short oval race in the Aero Kit era that didn't completely blow. So I thought this was a fantastic race. I was a bit concerned with the track length that we were going to end up, especially after they repaved it, with a Phoenix-style race in which the cars are going so fast with the road course, kind of road course, but they're really trimmed out, so they're pretty much a short oval aero kit at that point. With the short oval aero kits with so much downforce, with a repaved track, that there really wasn't going to be any passing produced because the cars would never be slowing down. That was not the case. Very tight corners at Gateway, particularly turns 1 and 2, rather than 3 and 4, which was flat out. But it actually created very compelling racing where there was the thing we always talk about in oval racing when it's good is comers and goers, guys going to the front of the pack and going to the back of the pack. A lot of passing. I was very encouraged with what I saw, and like I said, I was more saying, oh, they should probably put the super speedway aero kits on these cars. This show might suck, but it certainly didn't suck. It was action right before the green flag even. We didn't even get the green flag before the action started when Tony Kanaan spun out on the pace lap. That was a weird one. Apparently what happened was they were going to go green, they waved it off, and then they decided, oh, right, we're going to go green. So the field was all spread out. Kanaan steps on the gas and on cold tires bins it. That's going to be another. We're going to talk about Tony Kanaan later in this video too. And then we get to the initial start, and like I think I said on Twitter, was that anytime IndyCar waves off a start, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get a crash. And this crash was very, very spectacular. One of the biggest crashes I've seen on a short oval in quite some time. But on the start, it was Joseph Newgarden, taking a pretty incredible lead from the outside pole position on Will Power, who was the pole sitter, and really looking to gain back some championship points after a pretty great victory at the Pocono 500. He was looking for 2 in a row. That would not happen because he would spin out because a little bit of losing front aero by Newgarden cutting across him, but he also, admitted a little bit of blame in which he kind of cut the car down. Regardless, the end result was the car was in the wall, and then in the melee behind, of course, on the start, you've got everybody packed together. Takuma Sato and Ed Carpenter got together. That sent Ed Carpenter spinning up and over the top of Will Power's car. We were really lucky that everybody got out of that one, because anytime you see an Indy car flying through the air and near the catch fence, particularly when another car is underneath, that was potentially a really bad situation. But again, everybody got out of it unscathed. Their cars certainly weren't. All three of them were out of the race, and really we lost three of kind of the oval meisters of the series. Carpenter, Power, and Sato, probably three of the guys who were, in and out, some of the strongest oval track drivers. So that really opened up the door for, again, a pretty competitive race. The problem was it was competitive within the Penske organization. Now, a big shout out goes out to Scott Dixon, who was able to hang with the Penskes pretty much the entire night. Now, obviously, the only way he really ended up passing Penskes was on fuel strategy when Elio had his engine stall, and then later on in the race when the moment happened and between Pagenaud and Newgarden. But full credit to Scott Dixon, he was up there. But the fight at the front was really compelling between Castroneves, Simon Pagenaud, and Joseph Newgarden. Very, very compelling stuff. An exciting race, I have to say. It wasn't like an Indianapolis or a Pocono where they're trading the lead back and forth, every time. But this was the almost the perfect short oval race. Now, obviously, if we had 28 cars, it would have been perfect. But with how many was it? 19 cars after the initial pileup. We still saw the greatness of short oval racing, which is the leaders slicing through traffic, having to battle through lap traffic. And in the lap traffic, it actually created passing opportunities for drivers behind when that lap traffic would hold other drivers up. So in that respect, it was very compelling because a guy would get a big lead and then would end up losing it because they'd be working through the traffic. And unlike Phoenix, you could actually see the leaders were able to make passes on lapped cars. So it really, really helped the show. I can't stress that enough, how much it helped the show. Also about the show, IndyCar is under the lights at Gateway. Holy smoke. For whatever, I don't know why it looks so good on camera. It may just be because a lot of teams brought really good-looking cars from the perspective of their livery choices. Obviously the Menards car, the PPG car, cars that look really good. Hell, Elio brought the Shellio car back, so that's all good. But yeah, they look spectacular under the lights, even better than they do at Phoenix, where they're running about 5 miles per hour faster per lap. So the cars looked really fast. They looked really spectacular. I mean, this is a hard race to critique because of how many good things there were. We'll talk about a bad thing right now, and the bad thing was Charlie freaking Kimball, man. Holy cow, dude. He put one of the dirtiest blocks I've ever seen in a race, period. And I've watched a lot of F1, so there's a lot of dirty blocks there. I mean, it's not quite the Schumacher on Barrichello one at 2012 Catalunya, but probably like second or third on the list. He chopped Conor Daly all the way into the grass, and he didn't get a penalty. There's probably some people who would defend this, but I don't know why race control just said, I should let it slide. I don't understand that one at all. And then later in the race, only like a couple laps later, he dive bombed Munoz and almost took Munoz into the wall. So yeah, Charlie Kimball versus the AJ Foyt team. How does that work out? I'm not really sure, but yeah, I have to, give a lot of credit to Conor Daly, and we'll be giving a lot of credit to Conor Daly later in this race as well, because he actually had a really good race. But let's talk about the moment. And I've always said in racing, the only pass that I ever remember in a race, doesn't matter if it has 70 lead changes or 1 lead change. The only pass that matters is the last pass. And oh boy howdy, was the last pass in this race, maybe one of the best ones I have ever seen. Really reminded me of a Zanardi or a Greg Moore pass from the 90s. I mean, it was just that good. And it was Joseph Newgarden's pass on Simon Pagenaud for the win. Now, I know there's some Pagenaud fans out there who are a little bit unhappy, including Simon Pagenaud himself, because he's a fan of himself, because, you know, who isn't a fan of themselves at the end of the day? But it wasn't dirty. It wasn't dirty. There was contact, yes. And Newgarden dove it down the inside. Pagenaud took a defensive line, you know, and Newgarden stuck it in there, but they made it stick. They didn't crash. You know, Pagenaud did lose a position to Dixon, but again, we're 3 races away from the end of the season. These two guys are racing for the championship. There are no team orders at Penske. As far as I'm concerned, fair play. Fair play. It was just such a good move. It was so good. You know, it was one of those. It was. I don't want to say Senna. I'm gonna leave the comparison to Zanardi and Moore just because of IndyCar, the IndyCar connection. But that was as good of a move as I've ever seen, and I was jumping up and down. We actually had a family friend over who was a fan of Formula One, actually a fan of Fernando Alonso, and that was the reason he was even remotely interested in IndyCar racing, because he had seen the Indy 500, and he was like, "My God, this is awesome." So we may have been a new IndyCar fan because of this race. It was just, I mean, and Joseph Newgarden. I mean, we need to talk about this, because this guy, if he doesn't win the championship, it's a damn shame, because he has been over the summer just head and shoulders above everybody else. I mean, he is coming into his own at Team Penske, and he's starting to look like just an unstoppable force. Again, like a Zanardi. This is exactly what Alex Zanardi did when he got at Ganassi. It's even better, really, because Zanardi took a season to win the championship. It looks like Newgarden's going to get right into a top team and win the championship. I guess Scott Dixon technically did it because of the IRL, but he ran a couple of seasons in kart beforehand. So I guess Dixon's a better comparison. So I guess, you know, Newgarden has taken just, it's unbelievable the talent level this guy has. The only thing I can see taking, you know, Newgarden away from Penske is F1, and somehow I still don't think F1 would be interested in Newgarden. But, you know, if Newgarden starts really, really, you know, destroying everybody in IndyCar racing, I wouldn't put it past that to be a possibility. You may call me crazy, but I'm honestly believing that Newgarden could end up in F1 someday. Just bookmark this video, and 2 or 3 years down the line, if Newgarden has racked up like 3 or 4 IndyCar championships, and there aren't some rumors out there that he's going to go to Haas or something like that, just wait. You'll wait and see. I'm telling you. But yeah, this was a great weekend. This was a great weekend for IndyCar racing. It was, you know, you can't ask for much more. The only thing else, that was one thing I was going to say. The IndyCar Championship, this is why we don't need to chase in IndyCar racing. Even if Newgarden ends up, you know, if he gets to the point where it's pretty much the Joseph Newgarden commencement ceremony at Sonoma, it doesn't matter, because the champion matters. You know who the best driver is, and pretty much we already do know. I mean, it pretty much the last 2 races are going to be the Joseph Newgarden commencement ceremony. If there weren't double points, it would be anyway. But we know who the champion is. You can point to that guy and say, this is the champion. He is the best driver in the series. There's none of this BS like when Kyle Busch, and nothing against Kyle Busch. I do think he's one of the most talented guys in NASCAR, but he did not deserve that 2015 championship. You can't tell me otherwise. But again, you can point to the guy in IndyCar that wins the championship and say he's the best driver in this series. You can do that. And I think Joseph Newgarden, it's going to be a darn shame if he doesn't win the championship. But another guy, another young American, did a pretty good job this weekend. A really good job. And that man's name is Conor Daly. And I would go out on a limb and say he's the driver of the day, putting an A.J. Foyt car in the top 5. But rather than me gush on about Conor Daly, because Lord knows I've already gushed on about IndyCar racing way too much in this video, I'm going to hand it over to a friend of mine, a British friend of mine, to wax nostalgic about Conor Daly's performance at Gateway. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. If you see me at Watkins Glen, I'm going to be at Watkins Glen, so say hi to me if you see me. But I'm going to pass it over to my friend CookProductions1, aka Chris. Go subscribe to him and listen to his ode to Conor Daly.
Hi, my name is Chris, and I'd like to interrupt this video to talk to you about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. Most of you are aware that the Bommarito Automotive Group 500 happened quite recently, and that for some of you, the result was disappointing. 3 Penskes in the top 4 and Scott Dixon in second? You've got to be joking, right? But despite the predictable and often tiring results we're used to seeing, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. A light that only a few can make it to. And today, I'm very proud and privileged to tell you all that during the race, a miracle happened. A miracle that only a few can really put into perspective, and one that only a few will really recognize. Conor Daly, son of former Formula 1 and IndyCar driver Derek Daly, strapped himself into his ABC Supply AJ Foyt Racing Chevrolet, put his foot down, and did something that only someone of his magnitude can do. He placed in 5th. He did the impossible. He did something that nobody in an AJ Foyt sponsored car can even dream of doing. His entire season had been a road of disappointments and recovery that most people don't even get out of in the long run. But Conor learned from these mistakes. Conor learned from the hardships. He gave up everything, and in return, this is the statement he has put down to everyone watching: that you should never give up, and you should never give in. And even in the worst of times, people can still better themselves in ways that seem impossible to do in theory. But not if you be like Conor Daly, the speed vegan that we should all strive to be one day. So, if there's anything that you can take away from this race, it's this: be more like Conor Daly. Prove to yourself and prove to others that you can be the speed vegan we all strive to be in our lives. Because maybe one day we can all bag a 5th place finish in a semi-responsive car. That is the Conor Daly way.